All right, so let's discuss what are the things that struck you in the two presentations that we watched? What are the things that struck you? Something that, just made you, oh, like an eye opener. What are the things that struck us? Yes. Sean, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I will. And thank you so much for playing those videos because it gives a really good background to, for example, one of the questions you asked in that registration form was, have you had any trainings before in project management? And it just really, made me understand why this is such a big deal because now it seems like everyone is moving away from just your role to projectifying, like, that guy just said, you know, um, being able to handle things, projects and stuff, especially that in the second video talking about how this is going to play out and why it's important because apparently the whole world is shifting grounds. Things are always evolving, and that's the fact that we now have to understand how things work and how the human factor is also still remains relevant even though technology has advanced a lot. And especially where you talked about power skills rather than just soft skills. I think that's just really phenomenal for me. And as having gone through change management, I see now the relevance of both of them, where they kind of meet in between that empathy part, those power skills, and then being able to translate them into use them in all the other things that they do in methodology, in understanding technology, in making those advancements that organizations or the world at large is looking at. Yeah. So,
Awesome. Awesome. That's awesome. All right, let's hear from you, Fisaya. Fisaya, over to you. Yep. Yep.
Okay, so um, basically, what I can pinpoint from the two videos is that um, project management is one that cuts across different organizations, different economies, and it's just like technology that is springing and widening its breadth globally. It's also project management, and regardless of or which organization it is, when you're planning, scheduling, managing a team, you know, project management comes to play, and the vital role of project management in organizations is being further, you know, expatiated through the two videos. So you can see that wherever field or maybe whatever organization you have, it's something that it's a project management is a course or a training that's something that you always need. So it's not something that is just for limited to a certain set of people, and it's what is being used practically in organizations. So summarily, that's what I just picked from from the two videos.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. Now, let me point out some things that actually, each time I watch the video, things that actually resonate with me a lot. The first one is that 79% of executives agree that the future of work is going to be more based on project roles, right, than other roles, right? And the question is, what is driving that? The future of work, meaning that, you know, projects are going to be mainstream and we're getting there where things are, we're going to be working on projects to optimize what we already do, right? And and that's because of technology, which is the second point. Technology is growing faster than people and organizations can adapt, right? And I kind of agree with what 79% of executives are saying. The reason is because technology is leading to automation. And what automation is where we use computers, robots to do repetitive tasks, right? Well, and if you keep on automating your work, then it means you need less people to run the organization. But one thing is constant is that we'll need to execute projects to optimize those systems that we've created. So in the future, as technology improves, you'll find out that we have less responsibility in operations and more responsibility in projects, right? And that always strikes me anytime I watch the video. So projects are all around us. The world itself started with a 6-day project. I'm talking about in Genesis 1, when God created the world. You can see that it was doing something, and actually, there was a scope, there was a schedule, and everything started with a project. So we're actually in a project-driven world, and the project economy, right, is driving how things happen all over the world, right? It's
Mm.
driving how things happen all over the world. Yeah, sure. You want to say something?
No, I was just like, oh my goodness, I've never seen it that way before. The way you just, broke it down, talk about the fact that projects have always been from even when God created the heavens and the earth, right? Like it's and the fact that, we have to kind of try to catch up with technology, and it's just, just sinking into me, and I'm just having a great understanding of that. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, yeah. You're welcome. You're welcome. Technology is one of the major drivers of project management because as technology improves, things change and we embark on projects to optimize the way we do things. All right, so let's continue. And I just want to talk about our training guidelines and how we will engage in this class. So we're all professionals, so we expect that we'll communicate professionally with ourselves and we can take turns in speaking. Yeah, there'll be times where we're discussing on probably an interesting topic, and yes, it's okay to freestyle, but if we're not, then we should take turns in speaking. Now, you may decide to state your name, and this is a small class. My last class, we have about 14, 15 people. So that's a much larger class. So it's okay to, if you don't want to say your name, we already know. We're just three in this class. So it's fine, right? Then another thing is we should try to be on time for each session. Uh, I try to get online 5 minutes or 10 minutes before the class starts so that by the time it's your 3 a.m., no, my 3 a.m., I start the class. And of course, it translates to different times for you guys. As best practice, be just a few minutes. So you can join in 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes. And once it's time, I'll let you guys in. Enjoy every session. Enjoy every session. Have fun. Participate actively in every session and enjoy every session. Share experiences at work and best practices, right? Yes, let's discuss challenges you might be facing at work that relates to projects or how work is being done. Let's discuss our wins. That time you were on a project and you did something that actually caused a change, a positive change in the organization. There's someone that I was training recently, and what happened was she, you know, okay, I think that was last year. Sorry, it's not recent. Last year or the year before, and she was talking about a particular, right, a particular project she was handling, and she had someone who was a Muslim on that project, and she noticed that anytime they're having meetings, this guy is not responding. And the reason was simple. Meetings were usually on Fridays. And of course, they weren't getting the best from that person. And she just thought to herself, okay, Fridays is, you know, worship time for the Muslims. So she moved the meeting, meeting schedule to Wednesdays instead of Fridays. And all of a sudden, the person opened up. That's a win. That's winning someone over and also doing better at your project, right? Being able to manage people is a big deal in project management. And then, with your permission, I'm going to create a class group, a WhatsApp class group, and we'll be able to share things that relate to the topic, to what we're learning, and also share information on the WhatsApp group. So these are our training guidelines. All right. Okay. So let's move on. And yes. So I have this slide, and this slide helps you to look forward, right? Uh, how many people have read Seven Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey? Have you guys read that book? Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. Yeah? Anybody?
Yeah, read it a while back.
It's way
Yeah.
back.
Oh, okay, great, great. So we all know the book. So what do you think about the book? What's your impression, if you still remember? Good book, bad book?
Great book.
It's a great one and
Yeah,
keeps you your toes.
Mm.
fantastic. Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. One of the habits is my favorite, and that's the only one I can remember because I read it a while back as well. And one of the habits is called begin with the end in mind. Begin with the end in mind. And I think that was the one that resonated with me the most. Uh, I can also remember another habit, first things first, right?
Mm.
Prioritization. But the one that stuck with me the most is begin with the end in mind. And with that, you know, that habit actually says that whatever you want to do, start with the end in mind. Start with your end game. Today, we are starting this course. What is your expectation in 3 months' time, in 6 months' time, in 1 year's time? What is that dream or goal do you want to achieve, right? And I want you to visualize, you know, your expectations. I want you to visualize the kind of change that this course can potentially bring into your lives, whether it's a change of career, whether it is higher pay, earning, a very good salary, whether it's promotion at work. I want you to just fantasize about this step you're taking today. I want us to visualize, I want us to imagine. Let's see that end that we are expecting. Let's imagine, let's enjoy it, let us see it. I did my training and exam in 2008, and I've never regretted this course. Through this course, I actually have traveled to at least 2 countries training engineers, training uh, professionals in project management. And I've trained people from different parts of the world. In fact, I myself am, am I, my mind is blown sometimes when I hear where people are connecting with me globally, right? For example, there's this doctor this PhD student in Iran, for God's sake, and he joined the class. I've trained people from all over the world, right, in different continents. Yes, even Australia. So let's imagine, let's fantasize the end, the expectation, and let's bring that energy back into today's class. Begin with that end, with that expectation. Begin with that end in mind. My first class is usually about mindset. My first class is usually about setting the expectations so that you can live and go through this course with some energy and with that expectation. Begin with the end in mind. All right. Yes. 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 Begin with that end in mind. All right. Fantastic. All right. So let's move on with the expectations that we've set. Now, I'm going to talk about our trading objectives, what we hope to achieve through this course, and also state our trading goals. So we're going to introduce you to PMI's project management guide. Now, the first lesson in this course is that this is a guide, not a prescription. This is a guide, not a prescription. And I'm happy that Sean is in the medical sciences. This is a guide, not a prescription. And we're looking at something that is not prescriptive. Now, of course, the moment we talk about prescription or prescriptive, we think about drugs, right? Now, we're going to take you through a guide, a project management guide designed by PMI. PMI stands for Project Management Institute. And this guide is not prescriptive in nature. Now, what does that mean? So we're going to, talk about project management as a framework, as something that you gain the knowledge, you gain the tools and techniques in a structured manner so that you know how to make decisions on your project. We're not going to tell you how to step by step manage a project. No, we're going to teach you a framework, an approach in a structured manner to execute projects, to plan projects, to close projects in a structured manner. It's a framework, not a prescription. Now, of course, when we talk about prescription, you go to your, let's say you're not feeling well, and you go to the doctor will say, take these 2 pills 3 times a day for the next 5 days. If you decide to take one drug 1 time a day for the next 3 days and go back to the hospital and say you're not feeling well, the doctor is going to ask you, did you take your prescription? And the moment you say no, and then it says, that's why you're not feeling better. So we're not going to teach you like a robot what you must do step by step, like a prescription. No, we're going to teach you a framework, a structured approach to managing projects so that you are on the driver's side. You make the decisions. You have the understanding. You know the tools, you know the techniques, and you know how to start a project from start to finish. You are in control. So that's the first lesson. It's a guide. If you open the PMBOK, now this brings me to the next sentence. So we're going to ensure that you are familiar with the PMBOK guide, the 6th, 7th edition. When we talk about the PMBOK guide, What does it mean? This is an acronym for the project management body of knowledge. The project management body of knowledge, right? So we're going to go through the PMBOK guide in a way you can understand and apply the concepts on projects, right? The PMBOK guide is the reference material we're using for this course. We're also going to ensure that you're familiar with agile concepts, methodologies, practices, and frameworks. Agile concepts, methodologies, practices, and frameworks. Now, what is agile? I'm happy that both of you have done courses relating to business analysis, one way or the other. And when we talk about agile, what do you understand by agile? Let me ask a question. This is an open-ended question. What do you understand by agile? Yes. Yes. Who's going to help us? Agile. When you talk about agile, what does it mean? Okay, let's start with the literal definition of agile. When you say agile, when you say agility, let's think about animals. When you say an animal is agile, what comes to your mind? Yes, what comes to your mind? Fisayo, Cheryl, what comes to your mind? Yeah, Cheryl, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say agile is like the animal is almost like thinking on its feet. Like it's active, is strong, is able to make like rapid decisions, being able to move at a certain speed. I will say I'm trying to use some words for agility, but
Yeah.
something that is active, that is, can make spontaneous decisions and calls like that.
Okay, so let's think about animals when you say when you're
Okay.
thinking of yeah. Okay, Fisayo, go ahead. Go ahead.
Can it mean that maybe the animal is adaptive, maybe
Okay,
adaptable to wherever it finds itself or something?
okay. That's
Yeah.
another way to look at it. So when you're thinking about agile, what animals come to you? So if I say that animal is agile, which animals are you seeing in your mind? Yes. Which animals, when you think about agile, if you say that animal is agile, what comes to your mind? Yeah, go ahead, Fisar.
Okay. There are different ones. Okay, like I think maybe the squirrel, the cat.
Squirrel.
Um,
Yeah. Cat. Yes.
okay.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Sure. What do you think? Yeah, sure. What do you think?
Yeah, I was trying to unmute myself. I would say like you said, agile, like I really think about the cat family, the lion, tigers,
Oh, yeah.
like those in that family of animals, the cat family.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Very agile.
Yeah, they're really agile. Agile, agile means speed and flexibility, being
Mm.
able to adapt. So we're very right. Those are good examples of agile, especially when it comes to speed. And we can translate that meaning into project management. So when we are handling agile projects, we are agile is a faster approach and more flexible approach to handling projects, right? So the good news is that in this course, we're also going to talk about agile project management. Now, this brings me to talk about two different approaches to project management, one called waterfall, and the other one called agile, right? And of course, these are the things we're talking about, waterfall and agile, right? Now, waterfall is came out of the construction industry, right? Waterfall came out of the construction industry. while Agile came out of the software industry, right? And of course, remember what we said about technology. Technology is growing faster than people and organizations can adapt. And therefore, project management also had to come up with an approach that can meet the speed of technology. And that was why Agile was created. Agile is a faster way of delivering projects, and it's a more flexible way of delivering projects, right? And so we have two major approaches. Where project management started from is waterfall, and that's why today waterfall is called traditional project management. And the major difference is how they work. In waterfall projects are majorly found in construction-based projects, large infrastructure projects, projects in oil and gas, aviation are typically waterfall. Now, Agile came up as a faster way of delivering projects, and it has come to stay. So, in the world we live in, we have two major approaches, waterfall, agile, and when you combine them, we call it hybrid. Hybrid is when you combine waterfall and agile. So right now, we have the opportunity to live the best of both worlds. We can combine waterfall and agile into a hybrid approach that helps us to take the strengths of each approach and implement them on projects, right? And so the good news is we're going to learn two major approaches to handling projects, and that's really great. So at the end of the course, I'm going to be talking about how to register and pass the PMI PMP exam. This training is part of a requirement to take the PMP exam. You can't take the PMP exam without a training. And we are definitely going to go above the education requirement of 35 hours. At minimum, we are going to span between 40 hours or 50 hours of training. So you're also covered with our certificate to take the PMP exam. And pass the exam, pass the exam on your first sitting. This is what drives us to ensure we give you excellent quality when it comes to training. We want you to enjoy this course and blast it and pass it on your first attempt. Over the years, 15 years, I've been trained this course. Anytime someone tells me they didn't pass the exam, I really feel sad. I feel sad because I didn't have that experience, right? And over the years, I've actually, uh, you know, ensured that I try all my best, even after the training, to coach people, right? Sometimes I coach people, after the training for absolutely free. Sometimes I coach people. I get paid to coach people to pass the exam, but in my heart, I don't want to see anybody pass the PMP exam. And for for most, at least 95% of all my clients pass the exam on the first trial. And I'm sure that by God's grace, you people will help me increase that percentage as well. So, yes. So, welcome, 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 welcome. Okay, great, great, great. Thank you for that show. All right. So this is what we're going to cover. Next thing we're going to talk about is the wall. Now, the wall is the saturation point. The wall is the point where you find it more difficult to think through the questions and material, right? So the wall is, this is a 2-hour class, right? Sometimes people get stuck. Sometimes it might sound as if I'm speaking Greek. right? And that is what we call the wall, the saturation point. And so that we don't fall into the wall, what we do is that we have a 10-minute break every 2 hours to ensure that we don't get saturated. So after 1 hour, which we're about to get to, take a 10-minute break. And this is our tea break. So you can go and make tea. You can go and check on the kids if you have a family, if your family is there. You can take a walk, but just leave the computer. So this helps us to reset for the remaining 50 minutes. Sometimes it's not exactly 1 hour. Sometimes it might be 1 hour plus. Maybe I'm trying to finish a particular topic. Yeah, it happens sometimes. But one thing is for sure, we are going to get our 10 minutes break so that we do not fall into the wall. So on a lighter note, if you ever feel saturated, if you feel that the information is too much, all you have to do is talk about the wall. So you can say, I've hit the wall, or I can see the wall, or the wall is coming down, or I'm inside the wall, or I'm jumping on the wall, anything about the wall, and we understand what you are saying. Okay? So this is our code word for this is too much. We are seeing the wall. So in a couple of minutes, we're going to take our 10-minute break, our tea break. Please, I don't recommend taking coffee at night. It's not really good for your heart. So yes, we can take some tea just to keep us a little bit alert. And by the way, let me find out what's your time now, Fisayo and show. Fisayo, what's your time? What time is it?
Currently now is 8 p.m. 7:59.
Oh,
Yes,
7:59.
7:59
Oh,
p.m.
that's great. That's great. Show, what's your time?
Yeah, since we're in the same time zone, it's 7:59 my end. So where are you, Fisaya? I'm in Calgary.
Okay, I'm in Edmonton.
Oh, so we are in the same time zone.
Yeah.
Excellent.
We use the same time zone. Yeah.
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 Yes, my own time zone is
Sorry.
You be 4
4
a.m.
is,
now.
a.m.
is West Central African time. Okay, that's great. That's great. So
Yeah.
we're gonna have a 10-minute break, and then when we come back, we fire on for the next 50 minutes. And this will be day one of our first class. All right, so I'm gonna put up a 10-minute countdown video so that everybody knows when 10 minutes is up. And the moment it is 0000, just come back. So don't be too far from your system. All right,
Okay.
thank you,
All
and
right.
see you in
Thank
10
you.
minutes. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. All right, so this is what we're going to cover in this training. Number one, the 5 process groups. The 5 process groups, the 10 knowledge areas and their processes, right? We talk about where we're also going to talk about the framework. The framework, we're going to talk about the life cycles, the project life cycle, product life cycle, project management life cycle. We're going to talk about organization structures, the process groups and knowledge areas, right? That's part of things we're going to cover in framework. We're also going to talk about agile and hybrid approaches to project management. And on the last day of class, we're going to talk about professional and social responsibility. So again, the 5 process groups, 10 knowledge areas, the framework, agile and hybrid. And basically, that is what we're covering in this course, right? And let's look at them conceptually. Number one, the 5 process groups. The 5 process groups represent the different stages of managing a project, where the first stage is initiating. That's where you start. You start the project here. The next process group is planning, or you could say the next stage of your project is planning. The next stage after that is executing what you planned. And while executing, we also do monitoring and controlling to ensure that we make corrections to variations in our project, right? Monitoring and controlling ensures that we stay on track with project objectives. And finally, we close the project. So these are actually stages of project management development. They are also known as process groups. The reason they are called process groups is because in each stage of our project, there are certain processes we carry out to fulfill that stage, right? So, for example, when I'm initiating a project, one of the processes is to develop the project charter or a brief summary of the project. So, we the stages also serve as process groups where certain processes are grouped under a particular stage in our projects, right? So we have the 5 process groups. The next thing we need to look at is the 10 knowledge areas. And when we talk about 10 knowledge areas, what are we referring to? The 10 knowledge areas are the logical areas you plan each project around. So it makes logical sense to plan the scope of the project. And when I talk about scope, scope is where we determine the product we're going to build, the features it will have, right? And ensure that we deliver based on that scope. Some projects fail today because the scope keeps changing. In Nigeria, one popular one is the Ajaokuta steel rolling mill, which was built in the 70s. And the reason why that project failed is because the scope kept on changing and it took a long time. When you have when scope keeps changing, the length of the project elongates, and then there was now change in government. Different presidents came and they kept on modifying the scope until it became too large and they changed vendors and a lot of problems happened. So scope management is where we define what we're going to build, where we determine the requirements of the product and the project, and then we ensure that what is built is what we scoped out to build. Schedule management is where we develop the schedule. We come up with a lineup of activities, know when they start and finish, and try to manage the project schedule to ensure we finish the project on time. Cost is where we develop the budget and ensure that we have enough money to execute a project. Quality is where we determine the standards for what we're going to create. The standards for what we are going to create. So, in building a house, when we talk about quality, you could have different quality standards in terms of the type of paint you're using, right? Now, we have to define the quality standards, and this is based on your stakeholders' requirements. What do your stakeholder want? What is their need? Understanding that need helps us to determine the quality specification and standards for the project. Another logical area to plan in your project are the resources you're going to need to carry out that project. And when we talk about resource planning, we also have to look at the different types of resources that we have on a project. One is personnel, that's the people you need, materials you're probably going to need. In the case of construction projects, materials can include cement and so on. And finally, equipment, right? So we have to do some form of resource planning, getting the materials, making sure we have the people on ground and also the equipment. So communication. Now here we say approximately 90% of a project manager's job is communication. And communication is where we determine how people are going to get information in a project. Now, approximately 90% of a project manager's job is communication. Communication is actually the lifeline of your project. Communication is how we manage stakeholders most times in a project. And this is why, as a project manager, you're jumping from one meeting to the other because we have to ensure that everybody necessary is carried along and we and stakeholders can actually contribute to the project. Right, communication is 90% of a project manager's job. Now, a friend of mine who's an architect had this experience. So there was a time he was managing a project in Northern Foreshore area in Nigeria. Northern Foreshore is where Chevron Drive is, off Chevron Drive. That's where Chevron built their headquarters in Nigeria. And so it's a choice real estate in Nigeria. And he got this contract to build a house for his client. He's an architect. And the way they were executing the project was very simple. The client lives in Abuja. So the client will fly in from Abuja to Lagos. He'll go to his site and then they'll discuss. The client will pay some money and the architect will start building. And there's a particular time the client flew in from Abuja, went to the project site, and he looked at his building, looked at the project manager, and looked at his building, and he said, "Who asked you to do this?" Right. The architect looked at the man, his client, looked at the building, and looked at his client again and said, "But that's what you said the last time." And it became an argument, and he lost the project. Now, the question is, didn't they communicate? Yes, they communicated, but the type of communication that should have been used was not used. There was no form of written communication. There was no form of scope definition. There was no scope management. There was no communication. There was nothing to fall back on. So it was a matter of his words against his client's words, and you don't win such battles without documentation. A simple mail could have saved that project. A simple mail that, based on our last meeting, here are the action points. And I know I've just referenced it, but I sent you the mail immediately after the last minute, and these are it'll just bring out his phone, and so these are the action points, and this is where we discussed. And I asked you to confirm, and you did. That would have solved the problem, right? But he lost the contract, and that's one of the reasons why I came for my project management class. Communication is a big deal in projects, right? Because when communication does not go well, when stakeholders don't get information they need, it can actually cause stakeholders not to be happy, right? So we actually manage stakeholders through communication as well. So approximately 90% of a project manager's job is communication. Then risk. I often tell people there's nothing like a risk-free project. It doesn't exist. It's a myth that you're handling a project that doesn't have risk. That project doesn't exist in this world that we live in. That where we have village people, if you know what that term means, there's nothing like a risk-free project. Every project has its own fair share of risk. So another logical area to plan your project around is risk. Managing risk, identifying risk, determining what you're going to do when certain risks occur, right? Procurement. Now, when we talk about procurement, this is where your project is going to need vendors. They're going to need service providers or people that will be supplying materials. How do we engage with them? It is through procurement that we have a formal process of selecting vendors. And procurement is very important because if you select the wrong vendor, your eye will see something you don't want to see. So we need a process for selecting vendors and coming up with a contract that ensures that you have a formal agreement and there are terms and conditions, and we can actually manage the vendors that are working with us. And so procurement knowledge area is where we're going to talk about contracts. We're going to talk about terms and conditions. We're going to talk about strategies in procurement. And this talks about how we engage other vendors in our project. Last but not the least, and I often call this the 10th knowledge area, 10th knowledge area. And the reason why I can tell you this is the 10th knowledge area is because when I took my exam in 2008, there was no stakeholder management. I wrote my exam under 9 knowledge areas. So the 10th knowledge area is stakeholder management, and it's a beautiful knowledge area. The reason I say so is because sometimes it doesn't matter how much money you have for a project. If you cannot manage stakeholders, that project can go south. A friend of mine used to work in Shell, and he told me about a particular Shell project that the Market Women Association actually stopped. Right. I'm talking about the global oil giant, the multinational Shell. And here's a group of market women protesting, demonstrating, and they actually stopped that project. That's the power of stakeholders. If you don't manage stakeholders or you take stakeholders for granted, they can actually cause that project to fail. So when you think about 10 knowledge areas, think about the logical areas you need to plan your project. We need to scope the project, ensure that the project has been well defined so that we can build what has been intended and ensure that there are no deviations, unnecessary deviations to scope. Come up with a schedule, come up with a budget, set up the quality standards, determine the resources you're going to need, plan communication, how information will be sent, what format you're going to have information, plan and identify potential risk and come up with resolutions before those risks occur, come up with a standard for managing procurement, and also engage effectively with stakeholders. That's the 10 knowledge areas, but I have not talked about one. And the reason why I haven't talked about it is because it's probably the most important. Why am I saying it's the most important? Integration is the glue that puts all of them together. And why am I saying it's the glue? If things don't fit together right, it means they're misaligned. And I want to give you an example. So let's say that you're building a 5-star hotel. And when we scoped out the project, we defined the activities and came up with the start and finish dates of the project, which means from scope, we're moving to schedule. Now, if the schedule is not in line with scope, which means we want to build a 5-star hotel, our schedule is 1 year, 6 months. But in reality, the schedule needs to be 2 years. Then the project is not well integrated. That means we're going to have problems because there's misalignment. Imagine you're doing a project and you did not estimate properly, you're going to have issues. Or our budget is not enough to meet up with the scope of work. Or while we're running the schedule, we run out of money and so we cannot continue the project. So you can see I'm showing you the interrelationships between the knowledge areas. Costs also determine the resources that you can hire or acquire. Cost, we have to factor risk into our costing, which means we have some contingency reserves. Cost influences our procurement because we get vendors based on money. Procurement also relates to risk, right? Because there's some project risk that we transfer to vendors. Now, you can see I can go on and on. The quality, the cost must also match up with quality. If you come up with a certain quality standard, there's something called cost of quality. We have to be able to match our budget with the quality of the project that we're working on. In other words, your project consists of several moving parts that have to be properly aligned for your project to be successful. And that's the job of integration. Integration is where we look at all the plans and determine if they are well aligned together. And if you do the job of integration well, your project will run smoothly. Your project will run seamlessly. Your project will run as if you're playing a concert. That's because you have properly aligned and ensured that all the plans that you have complement other areas of your project. And this is a very important job for a project manager. One that a project manager cannot delegate to other stakeholders or team members. It is the sole responsibility of the project manager, and that is integration. All right, so let's move on and talk about the next thing, which is processes. Now, so far, we've talked about 5 process groups, 10 knowledge areas. Now we're talking about processes. So when it comes to processes, every knowledge area has been broken down into processes. Remember what I said at the beginning of this course, that our goal is to show you a structured approach into managing projects. And the structure involves processes. That means for me to successfully manage integration on a project, I need to carry out these processes. The first one is called Develop Project Charter. Developing Project Charter is where we come up with a brief, high-level plan of what the project involves. A brief, high-level plan of what the project involves. And that's where we start from. Then we go into creating the overall project management plan. Then we direct and manage project execution. We manage project knowledge. We monitor and control project work. We look for any variation from our project objectives and we try to bring it under control. We perform integrated change control. Integrated change control. This is where we manage all the changes in a project in a holistic manner. And finally, we close the project. Now, something you're going to notice is that beside each process, you can see the process group. Remember, I talked about process groups first. 5 process groups, which means across every knowledge area, we can also group the processes under the 5 process groups. Now, what is the function of the process groups? One of the main functions of the process groups is to tell us when. Remember, I spoke about a structured approach to managing projects. So that means when do we develop the project charter? At the beginning of the project, the initiating stage. When do we plan? When do we develop the project management plan? When we get to the planning stage. So the process groups gives us some form of timeline on when your processes are done. And of course, we go from stage to stage, which means the first thing you do in integration is develop project charter. The next thing you do in integration management is to create a holistic plan around the 10 knowledge areas. The next thing you do is you direct and manage project execution with the resources you have. And you can also do this simultaneously because they are both under executing process group. That's manage project knowledge. And this is where we capture knowledge that will be relevant for future projects and, also leverage on existing knowledge. Then monitor and control project work comes next under monitoring and control, as well as perform integrated change control. It can be done within the same stage of the project. And when all is well and done, we close the project. Even when all is not well and done, we close the project. So closing is the final stage of every project, whether you complete the project or not. So now we have a couple of weeks to learn all these processes. I can't teach you everything all at once because I want you to come back tomorrow. I don't want our heads to blow. So I'm just going to list the processes. We're just going to count the processes so that you can actually see that we're talking about, we're going to look at the processes that we're going to go throughout our time in this class. So let's count the processes that we have. We have develop project charter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 processes under integration. We have 6 processes under scope management, which brings us to 13 in total. Then we have 6 processes in schedule management. You can count them. That brings us to 19 processes. 4 processes under cost, right, which brings us to 23 processes. 3 processes under quality, which brings us to 26 processes. 6 processes under resource management, which brings us to 32 processes. 3 processes under communication, which brings us to 35 processes. 7 processes under risk management, which brings us to 42 processes. 3 processes under procurement, which brings us to 45, and 4 processes under stakeholder management, which brings us to 49 processes. So in other words, we have what we call the 5 process groups, the 10 knowledge areas, and 49 processes to manage a project end-to-end. 49 processes. And we're going to learn all these processes and try and understand how to apply them on projects. 5 process groups, 10 knowledge areas, and 49 processes. So this is the structure. But guess what? This is how waterfall projects are structured. Remember, I told you we're going to look at 2 approaches. So waterfall projects actually take this nature and they are well structured. This is why it's used in construction, oil and gas. Those industries are well structured. A well structured approach to handling projects is what we're looking at in terms of the 5 process groups, the 10 knowledge areas, and 49 processes. Now, one of my goals for the first class is to ensure that even if you don't know much about project management, you have a very good idea of how project managers execute projects. And I'm going to show you how we do using the PMBOK standards, right? So permit me to open another file. Permit me to open another file that helps us to see everything we've talked about today in a structured manner. Okay, so I'm going to open up another document, and please note, you will get these materials before the next class, right? So just expect them. So this is, yes, so this is a document, and I call this document the project management roadmap because it actually guides you on how projects are handled. So if you look at this document, it's actually a matrix that combines the knowledge areas with all the process groups, the 5 process groups. The advantage of this document is that you can now see at a glance all the processes in a knowledge area, and we can also see where they fall, right? So remember, we said Develop Project Charter is under initiating, and it also comes from the integration knowledge area. So this table summarizes what I've been saying, and if you go down the table, you see the different knowledge areas: scope management, schedule management, cost management, quality management, resource communications, risk, and procurement and stakeholder management. Right. So, and across, you can also, all the scope processes, you can see them across, and most of the scope processes fall under planning. They fall under planning and monitoring and controlling. So you can also see where the processes lie, right, in scope management. So how do you really manage a project without sounding too technical? Very simple. Now, this is a secret, but the moment I share the secret, it's no longer a secret. So I'm willing to share the secret with you. The secret to managing projects, right, is that we follow process groups. We don't follow knowledge areas. Yes, that's the secret. So what does that mean? It means that if I'm managing a project, I'm actually going to go down each process groups, and whatever process I see is what I'm meant to do. So where do I start from? The very first thing you do is you start by creating a project charter. A project charter is a brief summary of the project, which contains high-level details about the scope of the project, high-level details about the schedule, the milestone, high-level details about the budget, high-level details about the project requirements, and that is where you start from. So follow the process groups, and then you go down. Okay, is there any other thing I need to do to start up my project? Is there any other thing? Aha! Then you identify stakeholders. This is where you identify all the stakeholders that are going to be impacted by your project or can impact your project. So stakeholders that will be impacted and can impact, we identify them. Regulatory agencies, if your project involves communities that will be impacted, stakeholders, internal and external stakeholders, you identify them here. Now, this tells us something, that stakeholder management actually starts right from the beginning of your project. You cannot afford to identify stakeholders any other time, because if you don't identify stakeholders on time, right, when you move to the next stage, which is planning, your plans will be incomplete because not all stakeholders are involved. And it becomes apparent when you start executing and one stakeholder comes and says, but you did not take this into consideration. That statement can take you backwards in your project, where you have to reschedule, rebudget, start making plans to include their requirements into the scope of project. So if you don't identify all your stakeholders on time, it's just a matter of time. They'll bring you back. You might be in the middle of executing. They'll just look, have you considered this? It's actually a regulation. Do you have this permit? Have you done this? They'll bring you back. So we need to do due diligence in identifying all the key stakeholders before we start planning. Why? Because we plan with information and requirements of our stakeholders. Our planning takes into consideration the expectations and needs of all stakeholders involved, all necessary stakeholders. So creating a project management plan is simply doing scope planning, schedule planning, cost planning, quality planning, resource planning, communication planning, risk planning, procurement planning, and stakeholder engagement planning, and bringing them all into one central document called a project management plan. That's how we plan. So just imagine your next project and you want to do scope planning and you have a meeting with stakeholders where you define what is needed in terms of scoping the project. And then you move on to another session where you're now trying to drop activities to meet up the scope of work. You move on to another session and you're now determining how much money you're going to need to run the different activities. That's how we plan. We just follow this table, and the table tells us what we need to do. Now, when you have completed your project management plan, and that means you've completed planning, what do? You now move to the next stage. And in the next stage, we're going to be talking about executing. You have a fully developed plan, right? Then you start executing. And what do? First thing is we direct and manage project work. We direct and manage project work because we have resources, and following the plan, we are going to manage the work. We also manage project knowledge, and this is where we create knowledge. We create things that are useful in terms of knowledge for your project, things like lessons learned, things, insights. You create a project journal, which is knowledge about your project so that other teams can learn from your project. Another thing we do in execution is quality assurance. This is where we ensure that your team members are following quality procedures to ensure that the product you're creating meets up with the quality standards. Managed quality involves quality assurance. It's in executing, you get the resources you need, develop and manage your team. We also manage communication, ensure information is going as planned. We respond to risk that happen when we execute a project. We select vendors, that's what conduct procurement, and create a contract document. And then we manage stakeholders and ensure their needs and expectations are being met. We manage their expectations here. So all of these things are what you do when you're managing a project, right? Sometimes simultaneously, sometimes one after the other in different areas of your project. While you're executing, you also monitor and control. Why do we need to monitor and control? Because things change. And to be able to manage variation in our project. Things change. Sometimes you've already budgeted your project and then prices change, right? Inflation, right? Or you've already scheduled your project and then you're experiencing some delays, which was not anybody's fault. It happens. So monitoring and controlling is where we manage changes to the project. This is where we approve, validate, and control scope changes. This is where we control changes to our schedule. This is where we control changes to our budget. If there's a need to adjust your budget, it's under control cost. This is where we ensure that we are attaining the right quality standards for our goods and products This is where we ensure that we do not run out of supplies or materials in the project. This is where we monitor who is getting what information and monitor the efficiency by which people are getting information in the project. We monitor if people are getting the right information. This is where we monitor risk. We monitor risk. This is where we control procurement. We control changes to the procurement. We ensure that the contract is being managed. And this is where we monitor stakeholder engagement in the project. So monitoring and controlling is where we monitor performance and we make changes. This is where change happens in your project. This is where changes happen in your project, right? And finally, if all goes well, what do? We close the project. If by the time we've completed the project, all went well, we close the project. Guess what? Even if your project didn't go well and you have to abandon it midway, so you can move from executing and just close the project if the project is going to end for some reason. You're not going to complete the project. Either way, whether the project is completed or not, if the organization is no longer going to pay attention to the project, the next thing you do is closing. So with this document, you can read through every project. If you see, next time you see a project manager and they're working, just ask them, so what are you doing? And they're saying they're developing the project charter. Just know that they're just starting the project. So this is our framework. This is our structure. This is how waterfall projects are structured. And this is why we can apply project management across different sectors, across different industries, because there's a structure. And once there's a structure, it's repeatable. And that's why we use processes. So we don't have to now go and learn project management for healthcare projects alone, and then go for another course to learn project management for oil and gas projects. Once we learn the structure, we just apply it to different types of projects, and voila, it makes our projects easier. There's a lady that she got a job. She's also in Canada. I think she's in British Columbia. And of course, she applied for a project management job, spoke like a project manager, got the job, but she didn't have the experience. So she reached out to me, can I coach her on her job? I said, okay, no problem. And I've never done any project in healthcare. And I'm coaching someone in healthcare, managing healthcare projects. What do I know? I know the process, I know the structure. So whenever she's doing anything, I'll say, go and ask them, oh, please, I want to create a project charter. Where's the template? All I was using is this document. That's all I was using, because I understand the process by which project managers work. I was able to guide her, and she actually, got it very quickly, because it's all about understanding the process and structure. Yes, every organization is different. And of course, as a project manager, there's also a learning curve. Even for me, if I'm working in a new organization as a project manager, I have to learn some of the things that are peculiar. But what I must have is that knowledge and that structure that I can easily adapt. I can easily understand why they do certain things. This is what this course offers us, a standard for managing projects. So this is where I'm going to take a pause and get some feedback on today's class. In other words, I want to ask whether you come back tomorrow. That's all I want to ask. All right, so let me get your feedback on day one. So how's day one, right? How's day one? Are you going to come back tomorrow, or are you going to run away from project management? Yeah, so let me get your feedback. Who's going to give me feedback? Yes, yes, yes. Feedback time, feedback time, feedback time. Yes, let me get your feedback. Feedback. Anybody giving me feedback? Fisayo, Shell, any feedback for me? What was day one like? Hello?
Yeah, we are here.
I thought you guys were sleeping.
No, no, no.
All right. So what
All
was
right.
day one like? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, for me, just like I've had some like reminders, like aha moment, like I remember this one, I remember this one kind of thing. I see some similarities in like business analysis and stuff, but I now know, how it relates to, because then when I did that course, it was more like you still have to defer, right, to the project management office or project management manager on the job. And just I have a few questions. All right, so you talked about the process groups, the
Yeah.
knowledge areas, and the processes, and you said it's more because it's so structured, is more related to, the waterfall methodology. But we
Yeah.
will be using that same structure in some ways, weaving it in and out in the agile methodology as well. So that's the first question I have. And then something else I noticed is that there's a lot of work, looking through, you said we should go through the process groups downwards.
Mhm.
And looking through that, I see that there's even much more going on in the planning phase. And that really does make sense, because if the planning phase is not solid enough, then it's very difficult to execute, monitor, and close. So it seems like there is so much going on in the planning phase. And so my question is, so do you, in your experience, or based on how project management works, when you do timelines, is there like, does that mean that the planning phase takes a longer time, you know, um, in the whole process? So those are my two questions. But overall, it's been very high opening. It's really interesting to me, um, how these things work. So yes, thank you.
Awesome. So if let me answer your questions. The
Mhm.
first question is do we apply the same approach to waterfall? Is that the first question?
Yeah, so you said that those five process groups, the 10 knowledge areas, and then 49 processes, that you said that more like there's a structured more for waterfall. Are they going to be the same one we're going to apply in the
Okay,
agile?
okay, that's a good question. So one of the things about agile is flexibility. So
Hmm.
agile doesn't really take a structure because
Hmm.
the moment we say structure, then you're no longer talking about flexibility. So
Yeah.
agile builds on the concepts of project management, but in a more flexible manner. So
Okay.
when we get to agile, I'm not going to be talking about processes. I'm going to be talking about principles. I'm going to be talking about events. I'm not going to be talking about processes.
Oh, I see.
But yes, but the advantage of learning waterfall first is that you learn the a structured approach before you go to a flexible approach, which
Hmm.
means the project manager understands the fundamentals and where agile is coming from. But in agile, we're not taking a structured approach. We're breaking down the complexity in waterfall, right? Just like
Yes.
you said it, a lot of work, right? So the
Yeah.
second question is, do we do a lot of work in planning, right? And
Yeah.
is that the
Is
second question?
Yes, and is that where, like, in terms of timelines, is that where we spend the most time?
Okay, yes. So number one, it depends on the size and complexity of project. But do you do a lot of work here? Here, yes, you do. Now, um, and this is why I love this table because it shows you underneath the number of processes in each stage
Hmm.
of the project. We said we have how many processes? We have 49 processes.
49, yes.
24 out of the 49 processes fall under
Right.
plan. And the reason is very simple. Project management is primarily a planning tool. Project management, the core of project management is planning, right? So we do spend a lot of time or enough time. And the reason we spend time in planning is because we want to create the project before we actually start it. And this is also, interestingly enough, same approach. If we actually work on projects twice, right? We actually work on projects twice, right? Even in the Bible, you read Genesis chapter 1 and chapter 2, you find out that in chapter 1, God did all these things. In chapter 2, we now learn that is forming man. So didn't you form man in chapter 1? We create twice. The first creation is when we plan what we want to do, right? And when this plan is solid, it makes every other thing seamless. So we do spend a lot of time in planning. We do spend a lot of time, but how much time depends on the type of project. And like if you're planning a birthday party, I don't think your plan should last more than 2 hours at most.
For sure.
As compared to planning oil and gas that's going to take 20 years, right? So we do spend time in planning. So I hope I answer your question.
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, let's hear from Fisayo. Fisayo, let's hear from you. Are you going to come tomorrow? Let me know so that are you going to come tomorrow?
Okay, it's been my insightful so far.
Okay.
Enjoyed it class. The only thing now is this chat really when you start talking about this dwelling on this table, it just gave me one I just got the kind of I was just thinking that this is wide. It's getting wide. But then you said we should focus on the focus. I mean we should it's the focus areas that we should we're looking at not
The
only
process groups. Yeah, the
yes, the
process group.
focus yes. So but I know that with time I'll get used to the class and everything in general. I'll get more used to it. It's been fun so far and at least insightful.
Awesome. Yes. So what we've just looked at is a roadmap, something that shows us how, why, when. That's all we've just talked about. You want to start a project, initiate. What are the things you do? Develop the project charter and identify stakeholders. It's just like a step-by-step approach to manage a project, right? We want to plan a birthday party, right? First of all, come up with a high-level plan. Okay, how much are we going to spend for this party? How long is it going to take? 1 hour, 2 hours, we are done. Which vendors are we? It's a high-level plan, right? And then you identify stakeholders. You identify the guests, you identify the vendors, you identify all the people you must tell. It's the same thing we are doing that they now put in processes, right? So don't let me tell you, we've handled more projects in life than you. Project management is not new. We're just seeing it in a new light. We do these things subconsciously. That's what you realize. This is how I plan things. You find out. But what we're only learning is a structured approach. That's all. And of course, if we get it right and we apply the right processes and procedures, our projects will run smoothly. So don't let the big words and the big names overwhelm you. We manage projects very often. Yeah, Fisar.
Oh yes, exactly.
So I'll see you tomorrow by God's grace, Abby.
Thank you.
All right.
Yes.
So the last thing, do I have your permission to create a WhatsApp group?
Oh, sure.
Yes.
All right.
Yes, please.
Thank you. That's
Sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I still have a quick question. Sorry, I remembered I wanted to ask it. So why do you have some of those things? I'm believing you're going to explain tomorrow probably, but why you have some of them in red?
Oh, okay. So this table was constructed to reflect what happened okay, let me actually tell you. This table was constructed in the 6th edition of the PMBOK guide.
Okay.
And the red items were to represent the things that changed from the 5th edition to the
Oh, to the
6th
sixth.
edition. So something like this did not exist in the 5th edition. We didn't have implement risk response. For something
Okay.
like this, they changed the name from control risk to monitor risk. So the changes are the things that you have in red, right?
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
the changes are the things you have in red, right?
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
the updates. Yes, that's it.
Thank you.
That's it. All right. So before we close today, I'll give you the link for this first class. And yes, and you can, for the next 2 days, if you have friends that maybe want to know more about project management, you can invite them for the next 2 days free. If they'd like to join afterwards, fine. But if you want, it's left to you.
Yes.
That's one. Number two, we are going to do risk management, right? As we've discussed, we're in different time zones. I haven't done 3 a.m. training for some time. So if you come up at 7 o'clock and you don't see me, please call me.
Okay.
I might be in another world.
It's
And
okay.
I'm a human being like you.
Yeah.
So just call me. Just call me. And if I don't respond, forgive me in advance, right? Just just give me that day.
Okay.
Yes.
By God's grace, it's not going to happen, right? It, I've done several trains like this. Once in a while, it happens. But I'm just preparing your mind that if you
Okay.
come up, you just call me. I always put my phone
Okay.
on. And, forgive me in advance if it happens, but I don't think it will happen. So let me do risk management now. All right. So thank you guys. Thank you. I've